Hello, my name is Peter West with West Networks, and I just want to give a brief overview of transitioning to SD-WAN from a flat network. This is a typical network that we see all the time in my life. You have some headquarters office facility that has, either some sort of hosted VoIP solution or in-house PBX or whatever. They usually have a single internet line. You have your voice over IP phones. And then they're connected to other sites. Maybe you have some additional branch office sites, and um, and then you might have a colo data center or uh, some sort of area that you keep your servers. And maybe you keep your servers at your headquarters, but either way, the point is you have this network that has a single internet connection, and you're connected via IPsec, MPLS, or some sort of point-to-point connection. Now, the idea of a lot of companies is to be able to add multiple lines of internet. Um, a lot of times, especially if you're using MPLS, you can be paying an absorbent amount of fees for the managed connectivity that an MPLS brings. And given the fact that most MPLS lines are partnerships with other ISPs, the latency difference is nominal compared to how good internet is. For example, a lot of times someone might be paying for a 10 meg MPLS at $1,500 a month for their company, whereas you could purchase a 50 meg by 20 meg cable modem or good internet connection for $250 a month. And so what happens is you can have higher speeds, and those higher speeds can usually offset some latency and jitter issues, especially if you have enough bandwidth to go around. But you're stuck in this MPLS contract or this network contract with a specific ISP. And I want you to keep that in mind. You're stuck in the relationship with this ISP. And if that ISP has a problem, you're down because you depend on them for your entire network. So what happens with an MPLS provider is you want to add these additional circuits, and what happens is you usually get some sort of load balancing router that then allows you to kind of like use the MPLS line for your site-to-site connections, and then add regular internet traffic for your other stuff. And you don't really get the benefit of having both connectivity options. And so what happens is you want to go and look at some SD-WAN solutions, and I am going to skip right to this solution. So then you have managed SD-WAN providers. And these managed SD-WAN providers create a multi-WAN bonded solution to add to your network. And they usually sit right in front of your existing infrastructure. So you have a firewall, you have your voice or IP solution, and then they plug in their router, you plug in your internet connections, and then they bond those connections back to their environment. And so they bond all of your different peers to their facility, and then you can then create a network, a virtual network for those sites. And another thing to remember is that with these cloud bonding providers, you are paying for your internet, then you're paying for bonded services, and then you're limiting yourself now to a single point of failure. Everybody has failures. That's just impossible. If there's an outage in a data center that has to fail over to a backup data center, outages occur. And the point of having SD-WAN is to eliminate these outages. And when all of your eggs are in one basket and there's an outage of a core network, you're going to have downtime. Google had outages for a couple hours a couple years ago. Microsoft Azure has outages and they have billion-dollar data centers. So anybody that's going to tell you they're not going to have an outage, they're just ignorant to the fact that outages occur, and rightfully so. You are going to have outages as that's why IT people have jobs. Um, so so you're limiting yourself though to this one provider. And then what you're also doing is you're adding latency, because say this provider has a service in Atlanta. Well, you're going from your headquarters in Tampa up to Atlanta and then back to your additional site that might be in Tampa or Clearwater or Miami. So you're adding additional latency, you're adding additional cost for paying for their internet to bond you, and then you're putting a single point of failure back into your network. So whereas an MPLS, let's go back to this design. If your MPLS provider has a problem or your ISP has a problem, you're out until it can be fixed. With a hosted bonding provider, you have multiple internet, so you're up and running. But if there's a problem with this piece of equipment or there's a problem with your ISP providing the bonding service, you're now down. Now, a lot of times they can provide you redundant routers, which we will discuss in a minute, but you're still limiting yourself to a single point of failure on your SD-WAN environment. Not only that is you're paying for throughput, and then you have to pay again to have that throughput bonded. So I'm going to talk now about what Peplink does. Oh, the other thing about these guys that's actually kind of neat is they sit on the perimeter of your network. So they don't actually replace any of your equipment. So if you're worried about having to reconfigure anything, they're great for quick plugins. The other thing that some of them do is they actually give you a public IP to hand off. Oops, sorry. So you'll have a public IP that you're handing off. Now the downside of this is, well, now you have additional equipment here. So you have more equipment to have to worry about. You're buying this new router to do SD-WAN and bonding, but you still have to pay the maintenance agreements and firewall policies of your existing infrastructure. So they're quick and easy to install, but the long-term total cost of ownership is much higher, as well as the management, maintenance, and responsibility is going to be higher. So let's talk about what makes Peplink different. So in a Peplink world, what you have is total control of your own network. You're paying for internet here. You're paying for internet here. So what we do is we have the Peplinks do the bonding for you. Not only do the Peplinks do the bonding for you, they are also your router, your VLAN aggregator, your VPN, your firewall, your content filter. And so you have a single management platform for your entire infrastructure with no third-party issues. If there's a failure of this router, the high availability spare will take over. If there's a failure of this ISP, the other ISP takes over. So when you're dealing with this environment, there is no single point of failure other than the entire building going offline, which means you're down anyway, so it's irrelevant. So what we do is we create a SpeedFusion VPN, which is our bonding, and we aggregate those to other Peplink routers. And what this does is it creates an incredibly reliable and redundant infrastructure between your networks. You can have your 50, like in this particular case, if you have an ISP with 50 meg circuit, another ISP with 50 meg circuit, and your LTE, you can bond these together up here, and maybe you have an ISP with 100 meg circuit, so this is 100 megs, and this is 100 megs, so you have 200 megs here. Well, you bond that together, and now you have your 100 megs gets bonded together and goes out here. Now, if you have a colo in a data center, and you see here with, I've got my internet with my ISP1, ISP2, and we're in BGP, and we have our own public IP addresses, we can assign those public IP addresses to your Fusion Hub environment and provide NATed public IP addresses to your other infrastructure that's being bonded over a highly reliable and redundant colo BGP network. Peplink does or will be supporting BGP very, very soon. So it's actually something that we can even add into your data center as a Peplink architecture as well. You just can't do the Fusion Hub. You'd have to have a Peplink router to do it at your core. So if this was a Peplink router with BGP, you could speed Fusion in, have multiple IP address or have one IP address assigned to multiple ISPs at your core data center. What's neat here is it's minimal latency. It's going from site to site. So if this is Comcast and this is Comcast and you're both in Tampa, you're probably at a 1 millisecond latency between the two sites because they're both Comcast and they're both in Tampa. And so you're not adding additional hops and you're not adding additional workload or overhead, and you're simplifying your architecture. You have a router that does your bonding, your L2TP VPNs, your content filtering, your firewalls, your LAN and your WAN aggregation. And so you have everything set up right here. Whereas in a other solution, you have a lot of additional overhead being managed by other people. So these people are going to pass blame. Oh, well, we see the VPN up and running and we're passing it off to your firewall. It's probably your firewall's issue. Here, you have one support contract that covers your entire infrastructure, and all the data that passes through your LAN to your WAN is protected and covered and maintenance and secure, as well as you own it. You own your equipment. If you stop paying for maintenance agreements or in control, the equipment will still work. So it's a perpetual lifetime agreement. There's no monthly recurring bonding costs. There's no subscription fees for bonding or for load balancing functionality. There's no maintenance agreements that require for the router to operate. The only agreements are for in control cloud management and for warranty, hardware warranty repair. So you're not paying to have the functionality operational in your network. So with Peplink, we minimize your latency, we minimize your total cost of ownership, and we give the power of the network back to you. So there's less overall headache. The other thing with Peplink is you have centralized access to your entire network now. When you switch to a Peplink architecture with our routers and our switches and our wireless, you can go to one platform and see your entire network. You can see hardware warranty expirations, if devices are online or offline, how many clients are connected to the network, the status of your devices, the firmware, how many clients are connected to each device. You can then drill down into a client list and see exactly where on your network every device is. This green gateway machine is plugged into switch one trunk port one, then it HUDs up to the Mariana, and then Chipley has a ARP on it as well on an AP. So you can see everywhere this device is connected. You can see what channel it's using, 2.4 or 5, what the signal strength is of it, what VLAN it's using, what its IP address is. And if you click on the device, you can see a 30-day history of its bandwidth and its connectivity. Our switches, you can see right away what's active, who's on them, whether or not they're drawing power. You can switch their VLANs very easily. So you can have a default VLAN that doesn't have access to anything in the network, and then you can VLAN things as you need to on the fly, assigning them to your corporate network. Our firewall policies are intuitive and very easy to control. You have outbound policies, which take anything that's coming from a LAN, a VLAN, or a SpeedFusion tunnel to the internet. You have inbound policies that go from the internet into a VLAN, a LAN, or a SpeedFusion tunnel. And then you have internal, which is VLANs, LANs, and SpeedFusion tunnels. So you can create these firewall policies to really control the flow and security of your network from on the LAN side and on the WAN side. We also have IDS and DDoS prevention. Our L2TP with IPsec creates remote user access for people all within this environment, so they can access your network from an iPhone, an iPad, and once again, centralizing your entire infrastructure to one easy to manage platform that allows your architecture to be the one you own and you control. We also offer free web content filtering. So within these routers, we offer a whole bunch of different categories that you can then block. You can also add your customized domains and exempted domains. And then we support application QoS. We also support high availability redundancy and bandwidth controls. So you can see that with a Peplink architecture, you gain control of your network and you're minimizing latency, overhead, and you're maximizing QoS and the optimization of your WAN circuits. Not to mention, in our environments, you can have your SpeedFusion tunnels, but then you can have outbound policies that customize the flow of data. You can say, for example, if these two circuits were to fail, only send network traffic over LTE. Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff would be denied. You can say, use this 100 meg pipeline for phones and for critical operations, and then use this line for this, maybe it's a cable line or something for your internet traffic, and then use your bonded VPN for phone, like voice over IP, internal communications, access to your EHR, your other resources that might be in your data center. So you can completely customize with outbound policies how this network flows. And then from in control, you can centrally manage all of this. So you can create your VLAN centrally. So every site has VLAN 2, every site has VLAN 10, every site has its different networks that are set up. You can also centrally manage your outbound policies so that all sites follow the same policy. And you can centrally manage your firewall policies. You can also have a wireless access controller that's cloud managed, easy to use, but not cloud dependent. So if the cloud were to go offline, the APs continue to operate seamlessly. You can then see a list of all of your clients in the cloud. So we're not just a bonding provider. We're actually a network infrastructure replacement and control provider. So we give you control back to your network versus this environment where you have somebody sitting up here in a data center just bonding your already owned internet connections for you and then handing that off to your firewalls that you still have to manage and maintain, decentralizing the functionality of your architecture. Once again, it's Peter West just talking about the differences between MPLS IPsec, hosted bonding solutions, and Peplink routers. If you have any questions, feel free to give me an email, sales@westnetworks.com. Follow me on Twitter, West Networks LLC, and I look forward to having conversations about this.